Welcome to a Wayne 15 special presentation. Veterans Voices of Northeast Indiana. Now here's your hosts, Pat Hoffman and Alyssa Ivinson.
Good evening. We're so glad you're joining us this Veterans Day as we honor those who served. I'm Alyssa Ivinson.
And I'm Pat Hoffman. In the next hour, you will hear stories about veterans from right here in Northeast Indiana and across the country.
They're all a reminder of how thankful we are for the men and women who so bravely serve our country.
Our first story starts close to home at the 122nd Fighter Wing. Major Jennifer Ruth Green's career path was altered by a chance meeting. Now she takes every chance she can get to have the same impact on the next generation.
Born into a military family, Jennifer Ruth Green doesn't back down from a challenge, even in high school.
When he shared about the Air Force Academy, he said, it's very difficult to get into, very few people do, and it's hard to graduate from there. And so I said, challenge accepted.
Accepting challenges was a way of life for the youngest of 6 with 4 older brothers.
It was good to grow up with brothers, toughened me up a lot.
That toughness was needed at the academy.
When I got there, I was excited, and then after 2 days of classes, I thought, whoa. They just really humbled me very quickly.
Her intent was not to be a pilot.
I was intending to be the Secretary of State. Condoleezza Rice had become Secretary of State, and I wanted to be an ambassador. That was my goal.
That goal changed after meeting Lieutenant Colonel Lee Archer of the famed Tuskegee Airmen. They were the first African-American pilots in the military.
He said, hey, Cadet Green, are you pilot qualified? And I'd just gone through the physical. I said, yes, sir. And he said, are you considering aviation? And I said, no, sir. And then he looked at me and he said, if you don't stand on our shoulders, who will? And I realized it was such a pressing quote, the weight and the responsibility that they had to take on, merely 60 years removed from slavery.
That quote stayed with her. Today, she's one of just 150 African-American female professional pilots.
I said, I just feel really uncomfortable with people applauding that statistic. I want that statistic to be nullified to the point where it doesn't even matter anymore.
A colleague, Captain Chris Campbell, challenged her to change it.
We just kind of talked, and he said, you know what, Jennifer Ruth? There's no point in blazing a trail if the trail doesn't become a road. And I said, that's exactly how I feel. If I don't bring people up behind me, if I don't make it easier for them to come along, then it's worthless.
And Major Green has dedicated her life to doing just that. Last year, she founded the nonprofit organization Mission Arrow Pipeline to empower kids. Look for this story on Wayne.com to find out more about that. And she's not done blazing trails. In January, she will take over the Cyber Operations Flight, becoming the first African-American woman to take over a command position at the 122nd Fighter Wing.
An inspiration for sure. Thank you, Pat. We are just getting started tonight. Still to come, the incredible story of veterans who met in Fort Wayne decades after the Vietnam War and discovered an uncanny connection that created an unbreakable friendship.
I think about all the veterans and everybody that has served, but it also is a proud moment for me just to know that I was there, I served, and I appreciate everybody that did.
The transition from military to civilian life is challenging for many veterans.
But a bakery in Washington, D.C. is easing that transition one scone at a time. Anna Warnicki explains.
It was a lot, and it shook my system.
Kim DeFiore says when she returned home from Afghanistan, she was facing a more personal battle.
I had a couple suicide attempts while I was at the Pentagon.
After 9 years in the military, she knew it was time to leave.
And so I was like, I don't know if I can go to the conventional workforce.
That's when Kim and her service dog, Thor, enrolled in Dog Tag. Dog Tag is a nonprofit bakery in the heart of Washington, D.C.'s Georgetown neighborhood, serving more than just scones.
What we've created here is really this living business school.
Dog Tag CEO Megan Ogilvie says their mission is to provide a recipe for success for veterans transitioning into the civilian workforce.
We recruit veterans that have service-connected disabilities, military spouses, and military caregivers.
Every week, the veterans spend 6 hours in the bakery and 6 hours in the classroom.
They go through tests and papers and presentations to earn and graduate with a certificate in business administration from Georgetown.
According to the Defense Department, more than 250,000 service members leave the military each year, Christopher Plamp with Hire Heroes says many of them need employment assistance.
They have never made a resume. They've never interviewed for a job. They don't even understand the skills that they gained while they were in the military.
I mean, starting a business and you have no expertise in business, it's hard.
DeFiore graduated from Dog Tag in 2018 and launched her own nonprofit.
We founded Badges United Foundation,
dedicated to boosting overall wellness of first responders and their significant others. For Veterans Voices in Washington, I'm Anna Warnicki.
This year marks 75 years since D-Day. Hear from a Fort Wayne veteran who was one of the thousands of men to storm the beaches of Normandy. Plus,
coming up next on Veterans Voices, we travel to Washington, D.C. with Honor Flight Northeast Indiana. And for some of the veterans on this flight, it was a family affair.
They should honor and remember who keeps this country free, because otherwise we could be under somebody else's rule.
In September, Honor Flight Northeast Indiana took 87 veterans to Washington, D.C., and I got to go along. It's always a special day for the veterans, but for the Bandor brothers, it was a little extra special, having their family of service all together.
You couldn't want better weather. Real nice day here.
Honor Flight 33 to Washington, D.C. was full of stories.
I saw a lot of damage with the Germans. Every place that's supposed to be marked where they weren't allowed to bomb, they bombed it.
It's a completely new situation for war. You know, the booby traps they set up for them, they had no idea what they were getting into.
Reflection.
The Vietnam War, that memorial brought a lot of memories of my oldest brother, David, who was a Marine Corps.
And family.
It's nice to have all the kids and everything with us.
It's always nice to have family with you.
Meet the Bandor brothers, Max, Roy, Frank, Dan, and Randy. Blood brothers who became brothers in arms, all serving in the Navy.
My older brother went in during the Second World War, so we just kind of followed him in. When they went in and I was the last one, I thought, well, I might as well go too.
The sense of service, the call to duty for the Bandors is a tradition with deep roots.
Going back Civil War, we've got veterans. Their dad was in coastal artillery for the U.S. Army before World War I, so there's been a lot of service members coming out of the family. They're still service members many generations later.
Roy and Max passed away in 2000 and 2008. But Frank, Dan, and Randy, along with next generation Bandor veterans, John, retired from the Navy, and Michael, an Air Force veteran, embarked on a day to D.C. to see the memorials built in their honor.
Beautiful. It's a nice tribute to what the government has done for us, and we appreciate it.
I think it's amazing. The kid did a good job laying it out. It's a good tribute to the Korean veterans. The first duty station was here in Washington, and to see things again, so that gave me a little thrill.
World War II veteran Frank, along with his sons John and Bob, also had the honor of laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier.
That's a chance of a lifetime to be selected and go through that, so it was very proud for me.
When strangers stopped to thank them,
thank you for your service,
the Bandors saluted back.
I don't think I'm that big a hero. I'm seeing a lot of them, and I think they're all great.
I'm glad to see all these fellows getting honored like they should have been, especially these guys from Korea and Vietnam and that didn't get the thing that they should have got recognition.
Through the trees and between the memorials in our nation's capital, the bond of the Bandor Brotherhood grew even stronger.
It gives us great pride and honor to support them, to be part of this event with them. So having the togetherness is very special, especially honoring the time that they served and all the veterans that are here. It's just an awesome experience to thank them.
The Bandor brothers didn't just serve their country, they served their community. Frank, Randy, and Dan were all also Fort Wayne police officers. Another family of veterans on that honor flight, the Bartons. Korean War Navy veteran Robert Barton and his 3 veteran children, Scott, John, and Jan. Jan got a special surprise honor on the trip as well. She was inducted into the Women's Memorial Registry.
I had no idea that was even here. This is my first time seeing the Women's Memorial. So to see something like that is just amazing. And all because Dad started it.
Jan served in the Air Force as a Morse code operator and radio systems analyst. She and her dad also got to lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington.
Staple of honor flight homecomings is a special welcome home from Dottie Mack. Up next, how she's made it her life's mission to honor veterans.
It's just a quiet time to reflect on the many lives that were lost so we can enjoy the freedoms and the country that we enjoy today.
Well, our next story is a love story, a story about love for this country and the men and women who have fought to protect it. A story about a romance that lives on even though one of the partners has passed away. In her own unique way, Dottie Mack has spent her lifetime honoring veterans, with one very special veteran always by her side.
I have worn black, nothing but black, for 18 years.
Dottie Mack has been through a lot in life, and her appreciation for veterans goes back as long as she can remember.
My family has always been with the military. All the guys went in the service, and so we just honored the service, and we couldn't understand why people didn't realize how wonderful that was, what they were doing for us.
Her husband Paul joined the Navy after the attack on Pearl Harbor.
My husband never thought he was going to come home. He didn't think about what was going to happen after the war.
Paul was one of the lucky ones. He came home and married Dottie, lovebirds for over 50 years until a sudden heart attack took his life 18 years ago.
Never had a heart problem. And so I was in shock, and I had to go to counseling. And the counselor said, well, you have to find a purpose, something to go on. And I said, how can I do that? And I said something to make her laugh. And I said, I found my purpose. I want to do something to make people smile, and I want to do something that he can come along with me. It's a guardian angel. He's with me. I wear this everywhere.
Everywhere is right. Dottie is a karaoke legend in this town.
I don't want anybody to leave without feeling better about themselves. I don't care about me. I feel good about myself.
And what makes her feel best is welcoming veterans home on Honor Flight.
And I read their name tag off and their name, and then a roar goes up. To me, I've always felt that way, and to see other people feel that way is just wonderful.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, dear.
Treat to get to know her. Dottie takes great pride at how big the Honor Flight welcome home has become. She said there were less than 500 people when she first performed 11 years ago. Now a few thousand people show up to welcome our heroes home from their trip.
June 6, 1944, thousands of servicemen stormed the beaches of Normandy, a day that would become an infamous moment in World War II.
Al Edwards was one of those brave men. On the 75th anniversary of D-Day, he shared his story and some poems with WANE 15's Sierra Tufts.
He is getting old and paunchy, and his hair is falling fast. And he sat around the VFW telling stories of the past.
A poem written by World War II veteran Al Edwards. Edwards served in the U.S. Navy through the 111th Seabees crew, which stormed the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944.
Went in when I was 18, I got out when I was 22, it's 19 about the time.
When Edwards was told it was time to go and go across the English Channel.
Load up, boys, we're not coming back. Well, you sit there and wonder.
Wondering what would happen next as Edwards' battalion approached Omaha Beach.
But they had thousands of ships over there. You could use them for stepping stones. You could go across that channel, you could almost walk across.
I asked Al if he realized this day would change the course of World War II.
Yes, I thought I was going to get killed. I really did. It was terrible. You know, I come so close, and you know, like if you're standing here, and here's part of this protection you got, and there's a bullet hole right there, you know, your life is saved by 6 inches.
Edwards lived through D-Day, scooping up a jar of sand from that very day. Now he reminisces through the memories of D-Day with a sense of humor.
This is how I looked when I was in. I was not too bad looking fella. I've had an enjoyable life. I'm glad I got to serve my country. I'm sorry that I had to see so many people die, but I didn't ask to go to the war in the first place.
Edwards would have liked to go back to the beaches of Normandy on the 75th anniversary to do one thing.
I would like to go back and just be there. I like to kneel and say a prayer by myself. And I'm going to say, I sit and think, you are the real heroes. You're here to stay. Just a simple headline in a paper that might say, a country is in mourning, a soldier died today.
And that was Sierra Tufts reporting. You can hear the full version of that poem he wrote in this story on WANE.com.
When someone joins the military in a way, their family does too. It's a camaraderie of another kind, a sense of community found in hometowns across the country. Amy Simpson shares the stories of the Blue Star Moms.
This group of women didn't sign up to serve their country, but their sons and daughters did.
You come together here and we listen to each other and we get it. And it's just that understanding that isn't often provided out in the real world.
This is just one of more than 200 chapters of the Blue Star Mothers of America. Here in Virginia's capital city, they call themselves the Blue Star Families of Richmond. Stephanie Sill says it's a sisterhood.
My oldest son, Joshua, is actually a veteran now of the Army. He served about 8 years.
Her son's deployment made her appreciate other moms who can relate.
He plays with bombs for a living, so pretty much every day was a stressful day for me.
The group gets together all year long, packing treats for troops, each December decorating a holiday tree at the Virginia War Memorial. Susan Holcher is one of the newest members of the group.
I joined the group and immediately they sent a care package to my daughter.
Right now, her daughter is deployed in the Middle East.
Every day you say a prayer that she's going to be safe and everybody that she's serving with is going to be safe.
These moms say they're filled with emotions while supporting their sons and daughters, worry during deployments, but pride to have a child in uniform.
My kid went and joined the military. Well, I can do my part here in my hometown by taking care of those who also served.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Amy Simpson.
Blue Star Mothers of America has chapters all across the country. Type in your city in bluestarmothers.org to find the group closest to you. Still to come, an Army veteran is making it his mission to help other vets get service dogs. But first, an incredible story of a military bond discovered decades later. 2 Vietnam veterans meet in Fort Wayne and realize they had more in common than they could have ever imagined. Stay with us. As thousands of Americans did, Daryl Jaggers and Dennis Sutton served in Vietnam, then tried to get back to life as best they could when they got home. They never imagined a work meeting would one day transport them back to the jungle and forge a bond of friendship and healing.
Oh, good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Inside the Trouble Riverside Cafe, 2 old friends catch up.
5 days a week, yeah.
Dennis Sutton, a lawyer, and Daryl Jaggers, a banker, met as work contacts in 1993.
I was getting acquainted with the different people we worked with.
When a simple question over lunch
He asked me, well, what do you like to do in your spare time?
opened a door to the past,
I fly helicopters for the Army National Guard. They said, oh, did you fly in Vietnam?
an unlikely link
I said, yeah, I did.
dating decades earlier. The Vietnam War, America's boys fighting in the jungle.
We just went there and tried to do our duties. And I learned early on we weren't there to win the war. I lost 34 friends there.
Daryl joined the Army in 1967.
I knew my draft notice was going to be mailed to me. I found out that I could enlist for flight school and learn how to fly helicopters.
He piloted the Chinooks CH-47s, transporting soldiers or supplies, food, weapons, ammunition.
We did everything. Yeah, we carried in live people, we carried out bodies. We did what we had to support the guys on the ground.
Denny was one of those guys on the ground.
We were called grunts. We humped the bush. We were in the mountains. We were in the jungle. This is 1970. The idea there was to seek out the enemy and destroy, but we rarely found them. The only time we made contact was when Charlie wanted to make contact with us, quite frankly.
Denny had been drafted.
It was in the first day of law school at IU Bloomington, and my mom called and said, son, you're in the Army.
To soldiers like Denny, the Chinooks Daryl flew weren't just helicopters, they were hope.
Yeah, that thump of the propellers is what all grunts really look forward to, because normally it was bringing supplies or might be a medevac or something like that, but normally it was something good. Taking out the jungle for a few weeks, I mean, it was a welcome thump.
Then May 1970, Denny's unit, the 4th Infantry Division,
And my ears perked up because I knew that was where I flew as well.
got to turn the tables and help the helicopter crew.
When we went, we found a Chinook which was badly damaged and secured it, and we were there for a few days, I'm sure.
I said, yeah, it was 35 miles southeast of Pleiku in the jungle, and the helicopter was destroyed, but nobody was killed. He said, how'd you know that? I said, that was our Chinook.
I mean, I thought, how can that possibly be?
This is a small world.
Decades later, in casual conversation, Denny and Daryl learned their service didn't just take them both to the other side of the world. It was the exact same spot.
We found out amazing that we connected after, from an incident that was 11,000 miles away. Early May 1970, we could have both an impact from that, and both remember that so well. Now, the pilot was a good friend of mine, and I'd actually ridden on that Chinook 2 weeks before.
For him to be able to relate me being at that site, and I can describe exactly how the Chinook looked, and he said I knew it, and that was really, really incredible.
Even though their paths crossed, the two don't recall actually meeting in Vietnam.
I did fly a few more missions after that, up in that area, so he may have ridden in one of my helicopters, but I always wondered what happened to these guys. So meeting somebody that was there at the same time, it just made me feel great.
What started as a business relationship became a friendship that helped heal old wounds.
After you've served in combat together, yeah, even though we weren't side by side, but we were there at the same time and in the same theater. It's a brotherhood that means a lot to every one of us.
There's a commonality because of maybe what things that had happened and you've gone through. So it was a pleasure to be able to talk to another veteran. It was really pleasurable because we had been similarly situated and through a similar thing. And the other part of it, he's a great guy. So I made a great friend with him.
Daryl now lives in Indianapolis, but the two are still great friends and keep in close contact.
At 97 years old, Steve Lewis is perhaps the last living Buffalo soldier.
And his legacy will now be part of a new documentary. Rod Carter has his story.
Retired Army Corporal Steve Lewis is living history.
I was in 12th grade when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
The 97-year-old Manatee County veteran vividly remembers the day that changed America forever.
It was on Sunday. And I didn't, so it says Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and we didn't have, during that time, we didn't have no TVs. We had a radio.
Although after Pearl Harbor, Lewis enrolled at Florida A&M College in Tallahassee, now FAMU, a country at war meant studies took a back seat.
Every man in college had to be in the enlisted reserve corps
Eventually, he was assigned to the 9th Cavalry, one of 2 black cavalries known as the Buffalo Soldiers. The all African-American groups started during the Civil War. Their service, though, lasted until 1948, when President Harry S. Truman integrated the military. And by the early 1950s, they were gone.
And we didn't know a thing about no Buffalo Soldier in the Army. Okay. We never heard it.
Mr. Lewis may be the last living Buffalo Soldier around. He remembers his duties well.
Each man was assigned a horse, and you had to take the horse. When you're ready to go out, you ride the horse, bring him in, wash him down, clean him up, feed him, then you go eat.
Ralph Barnett is putting together a documentary about the Buffalo Soldiers.
In spite of the huge swath of American history that they cover and their importance in American history, the story has never really been told.
Mr. Lewis is going to be a big part of that film.
They don't give it the publicity it needs.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Rod Carter.
Because Lewis was college educated at the time, he was also a morning reports keeper in the Army. After his military service, Lewis became a teacher.
In this next story, we meet a man who is using his struggles to help others.
Laura Queso shows us how a service dog saved an Army veteran's life time and time again.
There you go.
At 140 pounds,
There you go, baby.
with the stature of a soldier,
Come on, Duke.
this is Duke.
Down, Duke. Come on.
A gentle giant best friend, a battle buddy for retired Army Sergeant Toby Yarbrough.
At the beginning, I didn't want one. I was like, I'm not disabled, I'm not blind, I'm not deaf, I don't need one.
But he credits Duke for saving his life after he was severely wounded during a 2002 deployment. He was on a mission to recover a front-end loader in Afghanistan.
In the process of repairing it, it shifted, and when it did, it pinned me down. And when it did, you had over 2 tons flat on your back.
In that moment, everything faded to black. Alive but paralyzed from the neck down, he broke his back in 3 places, suffered a traumatic brain injury, robbing him of his short-term memory. He medically retired in 2003, struggled to overcome PTSD and seizures. He returned home and shelled out $40,000 for the very animal that would save him time and time again.
And he was trained that with, he nudged me and I felt my medication in his mouth, I knew I was having a seizure. This is one of 7 different magazines that Duke's in.
We met the duo just months before Duke's passing. They went on a cruise, traveled to Belize, walked on a catwalk for charity.
Veterans need all the help they can get.
That's why Toby has made it his mission to match veterans with service dogs. Doctors, health specialists, even vets from across the country team up with Toby to find the right service dog. It's the life he wants other veterans to live. Today,
On the table, meds.
Sasha is Toby's service dog.
Harness, but it's my story. And it's a story that people need to be heard. Good girl.
And for him, Sasha and Duke are not only man's best friend, but the buddies fighting the battle long after war.
Unseen, unheard, but always near. Still loved, still missed, and always very dear.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Laura Queso.
Toby wrote a story about how Duke impacted his life called A Quiet Healing. That book is now an award-winning documentary. Up next on Veterans Voices, a special delivery 32,000 feet in the sky will take you to mail call on board an honor flight. While military members are serving, mail call is a special time, a little bit of home. On the honor flight, the veterans get to hear their names called and get a bundle of envelopes one more time, opening a little bit of gratitude from family, friends, and even strangers.
Earl Broadbeck.
I just wanted to send a note of hello and to let you know I am thinking about you. I would like to express to you today that you, in my opinion, are the true definition of hero. Even though I don't know you, I am filled with the utmost respect and admiration for you, and appreciate your amazing and great service you rendered to our nation. Your outstanding service, sacrifices, and bravery have not gone unnoticed. And I just want to say thank you.
Larry Jones.
And that's our show. Thank you again for joining us. You can see all these stories as well as others on the Veterans Voices page on WANE.com.
On behalf of all of us at WANE 15, thank you to all our veterans. Good night.